Axel here in the Intentional Leadership Podcast Kitchen. Ready for your daily dose of empowerment? I'm incredibly excited for this session. It's such an honor to be able to explore the journey of this inspiring intentional leader. Claire Zovko is a professor at the University of Miami, founder of both Lighthouse Yoga and Wellness, as well as Moon Rising Retreat, and an advanced yoga and wellness teacher. Claire's journey through collegiate level basketball, law school, and sports advocacy has led her into her divine purpose of teaching on both the college platform as well as the yoga mat. She inspires, guides, and ignites the light within each of her students through knowledge, wisdom, and awareness. Her intentional leadership journey has touched so many lives, including mine, and I am truly honored to be able to share this platform with her. Listen in and be inspired. Welcome, Claire, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm just so excited because you are truly an inspiration, not only to the yogic community, but the community in this world at large. So I'm really excited to spend this time with you, Claire. To start, I always ask our guests to share highlights that you would highlight for us as the audience and listeners of your intentional leadership journey. Intentional leadership is anyone who owns their purpose, their mission, their values, and how they embody that in their day-to-day lives. So I'm just going to open up the floor because I don't ever want to take that spotlight off you. I'd love to hear it from you. So if you could give us some highlights for us to dive in, that would be wonderful.
So I was born and raised in the Seattle area and was very drawn to sports my whole life. So I played many sports, but then honed in on basketball. And basketball was the driving decision that led me to the college that I selected, Pacific Lutheran University in the Seattle area. And basketball was everything to me at that time. And that's where I learned many of the values that I continue to operate my life from. And, there came a point where the ball had to stop bouncing when college was complete. And that was when I happened to take my first yoga class. So a seed was planted at that time. And one thing I learned in college that became very clear to me was I love learning. So even when college was over, I knew there was more learning for me and I yearned to learn more. So when I was looking at additional schooling, what really jumped out and resonated with me at that time was law school. So I researched and applied to many schools. And in the end, I chose University of Miami. And so that is the catalyst that brought me across the country to a completely different environment for a really vibrant learning experience. And so I continued to learn and study the law. And when I finished law school, that was when I took my first yoga teacher training program that I had been practicing for many years at that point. And I knew I wanted more, and I seek to go deeper, and I seek to experience deeper levels of myself. And so I went ahead and took that first jump and leap into a 200-hour teacher training program. So I kind of had these parallel paths that as I was learning academic skills and whatnot, I was also learning more about me through the practice of yoga and who I am and what is my purpose in this world. And so I continued to evolve, and I ended up deciding after law school to stay in Miami, which led to my yoga journey going deeper. I ended up taking another teacher training and ended up starting to teach very soon after at University of Miami as an adjunct first. And that role grew into eventually full-time. So just teaching and learning has always been critical to me, natural to me, and part of my evolution. So I've consistently looked for ways to teach and create and share. And so that's kind of what led me to where I am now, that at this point I have a yoga studio where I teach every single week, and I teach trainings and workshops and retreats. And then I happen to also still teach at the University of Miami, and I teach sports law and sports governance. So this continuing theme of education, eternal learning and sharing and evolving.
Ooh, thank you for that. So much to unpack and so exciting because you mentioned this after basketball, you took your first yoga class. What sparked that? What called you in there? What was that? What was that calling in that moment for you?
So I've always been like a yes person. I'm just down for the next adventure. I'm down to explore. So at that time, I happened to be in New York City, and my aunt said to me, "I'm going to this yoga class. Would you like to come?" And I had no idea. I hadn't practiced yoga before, didn't know much about it, but I was just excited to try something. So I said, "Yeah, of course. No resistance. Let's go." And
Wow.
I went. And even though I was very strong in my physical body from playing sports, I lifted weights. I could run fast at that time. I was in very fit physical shape. But I remember when I went to the yoga class, it happened to be a hot yoga class, and it was in a hot room. And I remember being challenged in this way that I'd never experienced before, where just with my own body weights and the movements and the breath work that we were doing, it was at that point probably one of the most challenging experiences I've ever had. So I was just blown away by how powerful the human body apparatus is and what we can learn from it and how we can refine it. So the door just blew open in that moment of curiosity. What
Wow.
is this?
Wow. Wow. The profound characteristics of one surrender as well as curiosity and lifetime learner and growth mindset all together continued to blossom in your life, really endless possibilities, it sounds like.
Yes, it's brought me in ways that I couldn't have even fathomed.
Ooh, well, let's go there. So you mentioned parallel paths as you explored the legal industry world, knowledge, knowing, and advocacy and teaching as it relates to law. You were running or walking a parallel path of yoga, mindfulness, breath work, wellness, well-being, and that journey of self. When on that journey do you feel like it began to intertwine somehow?
So, in hindsight, at this point, when I look back, when I was choosing to play sports and when I was choosing to go to law school, I've now looked at why, like what was the drawing factor for me to choose these things. And what I've unpacked myself is to see that what was driving me at that point in my life was this question of, am I good enough? And so through sports, it was this constant process of trying to prove myself, as the best player and getting selected for these select teams and getting the college scholarship, and then going to law school again, it was another form of aiming to prove myself. Let me get good grades. Let me be the best in my class. Let me get this top job, etc. And so I learned all that through the practices of awareness of yoga. Like I really got to see why I was doing what I was doing. And so additionally, through the practices of yoga and wellness and healing, I have healed that challenge within myself. So I no longer have that question of, am I good enough? I'm aware I am, and my value is innate, and I have immense value to provide this world. And so once I came to that point as an embodiment within me, now there is an intertwinement. I'm going to just be me. I'm going to keep learning. And then spaces will show up where it's relevant for me to share. And I'll show up to those spaces fully. So there's no longer the questioning, but there's this humility that, yes, I have a purpose. Yes, I have immense value. And I'm here to remind others of the exact same. So the intertwinement was natural over time. And the more I healed and grew, then the sharing of what I was learning was very natural.
Looking back at the time where you healed and grew, in the yogic world, I know some may call that the dark night of the soul. In the corporate world, it's deep reflection and stepping back. Tell us what got you through that, or what brought you through that. Give us, if you looked back, what were those things that empowered you to walk in really vulnerability, and humility, through that time of reflection, where, peeling back those layers of understanding not only the why, but saying why that doesn't serve me anymore. It sounds like, right? That journey. How did you get through that, and what could you leave with us in terms of those that may be going through it now, or wanting to go through it, or on the other end of it? What would that be for you?
So it's been a journey. It was, for me, it was not a light switch. It wasn't an overnight epiphany, but it was years and years of practice, of opening when I want to close, of learning to use my voice, of learning to be able to express myself and how I feel. And one of the tools on my journey that really propelled the speed of this journey for me was when I met my teacher and I started going to India and started to learn the integrated yoga practice from the source there. And particularly practicing Kriya Yoga, which is the yoga of evolutionary action. So being able to, through practices, go beyond my mind, go beyond my stories, and start to meet myself in a higher state of consciousness. And then in the higher state of consciousness, be able to look back and see what I'm doing to myself, what I have done to myself. And that realizing I have the power of choice in this moment, and I can choose a new way. I can choose to give new meaning to anything that has happened, that is happening, that is going to happen right now. So I feel through these integrated yoga practices, it's given me the sovereignty, the autonomy, and the ability to really step up into the greatness of what I'm here to do, and to realize that as a visceral experience. And the same for everybody. And it's been a journey. It's had its ups and downs. Yeah. But I'm now clear that I'm here to learn and share.
What an incredible journey. It's that intentional, the intentional, it includes awareness, it includes reflection, and it includes a boatload of tools, right? And, you know, the more I meet with different leaders showcasing what tools are, the tools are endless. So for you, it sounds like a very powerful and deep journey with a yoga teacher in India that brought you deep and continues to, it sounds like, bring you deep within yourself, because the journey is never over. There's always more to peel back, right? So fast forward now to where we are today. You talked a lot about who you are and that you show up in every moment. And I think for me, and maybe those listening in might think, okay, wait, but you got to show up at school and teach and have a curriculum and grade some papers. And then you've got to move over. How are you, what's a day in the life of Claire from your perspective? Maybe that's really the insight that I'm hungry for.
So every day is unique. Every day has its unique aspects. But what I've found works for me, that, you know, having a full plate. And intentionally, I enjoy my full plate, and I enjoy all the things that I am involved in and the ways that I'm sharing and expressing. So I've found that it works best for me that I have to be fully present to whatever it is I'm doing. So if I'm at the university teaching class, I'm fully there. I'm into it. I'm looking the students in the eye. We're having conversations. I'm there. You know, and then fast forward, if I'm at the yoga studio and I'm teaching a class, the same thing. In that moment, I'm in that space fully. So it's been a practice of continuing to bring my awareness literally back to whatever it is I'm doing. You know, when our awareness is scattered, when our awareness is defragmented, we become weaker, literally down to the level of our immune system. So I've learned to stay strong, to stay in optimal energy. It requires full presence now. So that's the practice that I'm always in. Wherever I am, I'm practicing being fully there.
I think you may have shattered some beliefs out there of folks that may not practice yoga just yet, but this idea that yoga truly is a tool that it's best brought off of the mat. It sounds like you've taken yogic practices of mindfulness, presence, the here and the now into your day-to-day world, which includes, again, like many may think, oh, yogics sit on the mat all day, and they say stay in maybe the ashram or at the base of a beautiful shrine or mountain top. But your story and your journey is inspirational because you've taken the practices and you've infused it to our everyday world that truly does empower you to not only be successful, but to create impact, to create true impact.
Yes, and like it states in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the yogic philosophy texts, it says that we're here to be in the world, but to also remember we're not of the world. So to remember our eternal nature, our infinite nature, but then yes, to move through the world and be that light, right?
Yeah. So you've got a few beautiful sacred spaces that I'd love to hear about. I've seen it in a few pictures, but take me through this just a tour of one Lighthouse Yoga and Wellness Center, a beautiful sacred space, into Moon Rising. Tell me a little bit more about these spaces you're creating.
So after my first time studying in India, when I took my 300-hour teacher training, I remember that was where I learned a daily meditation practice. And that was a monumental shift in my life, where I started to carve out that time and experience that time of silence and stillness in my life and started to value it. And when I was in meditation one time, I received this inner knowing of I needed a space to teach and create. So I wasn't really actively looking, but that clarity came through, that it's relevant to have a space to teach and create. So at that time I was practicing and teaching at a local studio. And I remember the owner mentioned to me that she was going to close the studio down. And when I heard that, my stomach literally just felt like it was in knots. And it was bizarre because I wasn't expecting that. And so I said to her, is that the only option? And she said, well, I could sell it. And so I wasn't thinking of my mind in this moment. I was just responding. And I said, well, how much would it be? And we've had this conversation and it was reasonable. So without too much thought, I just said yes. And I realized this could be a space where I could teach and create. And so that was the background of Lighthouse Yoga and Wellness, which is in the Miami Lakes area. And that was in 2016. And so it's a beautiful sacred space where beautiful, open, willing souls have shown up and continue to show up to do this work. And when I say this work, I mean self-reflection and self-realization, and really look at oneself and be open to grow and evolve. So that is what we do in our space at Lighthouse. We connect as community, we practice the practices, we share, we laugh, we cry, and we all grow and fine tune our expression of ourself continually.
Beautiful. And then take me into to Rising Moon. Take me there.
So I started feeling a couple of years ago that there was going to be a second space. And from my limited mind, what I thought that meant was a second studio. And again, I wasn't actively looking, but I was open that, there's going to be some second space. And me and another woman were co-hosting and leading retreats up in the North Carolina mountains. So I was personally going there. I felt a beautiful affinity and call to the North Carolina mountains. And then back in September 2021, she sends me a text of a real estate listing of the property that is now Moon Rising Retreat. And the moment that I clicked that text and just opened it up, I looked at it. And the moment I looked at it, I knew this is a very special place, and my body physically reacted. There was like this knowing of this is something very important. And so her and I happened to be doing a retreat up there a couple of weeks later. So we went and did our retreat at Beach Mountain in North Carolina. And I knew while I was there, I needed to go see this place. So when the retreat was over, I had a real estate agent and we went down and saw the property. And the moment I stepped on the property, I felt just every cell in my body of recognition that this place was familiar, this place was a home, and this was a place that I'm meant to open to and expand into. So I was on board. It was very exciting. And I came back home to tell my partner, and he says, you know, I've never been to North Carolina. Why would we go to North Carolina? Why would we buy a house in North Carolina? You know, logically, it made absolutely no sense to the logical mind. And so I knew my words were not going to be the convincing factor with him on this venture. So I knew he had to experience it as well. So a few weeks later, I was able to bring him up, and he had a similar experience. When he stepped on the lands, there was this part of his soul and his body just saying yes. So we both finally got to this point of yes, but we had no idea. How are we literally going to pay for it? How are we going to be going to North Carolina when, you know, I have the studio in Miami and Bond has a few restaurants in Miami? Like, how is this going to work out? You know, it just really didn't make sense, and seemed very challenging on the logical plane and the plane of the mind. But we both felt it, that we had to say yes. So, you know, I remember when I was at the property that first time, I just had a moment, and I went in the water, and I had the water come up to like my knees, and the sun was rising up, and I just closed my eyes and opened my arms, and I surrendered. And I said, you know what? I don't know. I don't know how we're going to pay for it. I don't know how we're going to do it. I don't know anything. I don't know absolutely anything about this venture. But what I do know is my commitment, that I'm committed. And what I'm committed to is showing up, just like I showed up in this moment. And I'll continue to show up to whatever is relevant. And that's my power. That's what I can contribute. But the rest, I'm just giving it up. I don't know. And you know, tears are streaming out, and I'm just feeling the sun and the wind and the freezing water. And it's just this powerful, intense moment, you know, and fast forward, all the details aligned. And from that moment, it was 2 months later that we had the keys in our hand. And now we have this beautiful, sacred healing. It's a nonprofit. We opened it as a nonprofit as we seek to share business in a conscious way. So it is a spiritual educational center and a retreat center for anyone that seeks to come for their own education and spiritual practices, or for group retreats.
A real life surrender experience story right there, Claire. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that I want to dive a little deeper into the surrender experience, because many, many years ago, if I heard the word surrender, it would cause all kinds of nerve endings in my body to flare up, thinking that surrender is giving away power or doing nothing, or but you've hit on a few things that I think may shift that. Is you live in surrender with a full plate, with the knowing of right action, with an awareness and presence. And so all that put together creates endless possibilities, like I already said. But so let's dive a little bit into the surrender experience, because one incredible teacher brought that to my awareness six plus years ago now, and it changed my life. The surrender experience. What does that mean to you? You shared a story, but tell me about how you came to it, what it means to you, and how important it is in your life, this act of surrender.
So my experience has been pre-surrender is that I worked hard and I put in a lot of effort, you know, and I played sports and I excelled at them, and I went to law school and accomplished that. And on paper, I did many things. And where though that was coming from was part of me feeling incomplete, part of me feeling I'm not good enough. So there was this ego driving me to prove to the world, but also more importantly to myself, that I was good enough. So the first surrender was realizing the human is enough. Every human is the expression of the divine in finite form. And we're all inherently enough, regardless of what we do or what we don't do. And so from that place, then my life started to shift where I no longer needed to prove myself to anyone or to myself. There's this base knowing of, yeah, I have important value, as we all do. So now when I move from this place, I don't have to be in control. And the more I can let go of control is now where the divine can fill in the details. Because if I'm in control, I can only operate from the past and what I know, which is a limited amount. So the moment I can surrender and I can say, I don't know. Now that's when the magic happens. That's when all these things that I cannot fathom just start to happen. And they're so beautiful and they're beyond. Like, again, a couple of years ago, if you told me I was going to get this place in North Carolina and start this retreat center, I said, there's absolutely no way. That makes no logical sense.
Right.
And that's the beauty of it. When we get out of the logical mind, now we can open to the creative potentiality of being, right? The right side of the brain, which is all within every human being, but we don't access it. And in our society, it's not really even rewarded or regarded as highly as all the doing, do more, achieve more, make more money, get another degree, all that. So it was this shift in my consciousness of the importance from moving from doing to being. And in this state of being, now there's space, there's adaptability, there's possibility, there's infinity in being.
On this intentional leadership platform, we talk a lot about the controllables and the uncontrollables, and you touched on that a little bit. Where we've unpacked that is that in order to stay in the state of being, intentional, is to not focus or to be aware of the uncontrollables, but to not focus on it. That our life experience is more about focusing on the controllable factors or elements in our lives that allow us and empower us to move into what the infinite possibility is. How do you kind of in these journeys that you've shared and in these moments of it, it sounds like there were moments where there were nothing you can control because you didn't know the how. But when you saw the how appear, let's call it for a moment, how do you recognize what is in your control and what is maybe called right action to you that you need to move? Because there is this balance of being and doing in this human experience. How do you decipher that? And you mentioned a little bit of the gut for you starts to give you some signs. How do you know when it is within your controllable bucket that you have to begin to do?
So from my experience and practicing and having the meditation as a base practice, I've enjoyed and explored and really found an intimacy with silence. And I've then witnessed when there's more values of silence within myself, when something comes before me to do or not to do, or to make a choice or not make a choice, from the base of silence, there's this spontaneous right action that happens compared to when I've experienced having more noise in my mind, more thoughts, more debates, more confusion in my mind. Then I would be making choices backed by noise. And so then the action I took was actually ego action. It was what I wanted. It was, the ego expressing itself in some form. So the real shift for me was backing more and more silence and creating those times in my day to have more and more silence. So before I'm going to deliver a large lecture or before I'm going to make a big decision, my go-to is go to silence. Go to silence and stillness. So it's not me, Claire, small me as the ego saying, oh my gosh, what should I do? I don't want to make a wrong choice, on and on and on, but saying it's not me. I'm being used as a vessel, a vessel for the divine to express the infinite in a finite form. And so I'm going to go to silence and I'm going to tune in. And while I'm tuned in, then I'll just allow what arises. And then it arises from silence as a knowing. And so then the action is just clear on how to proceed. And there's no thought required in silence.
So not common practice, but makes actually common sense that intention is through clarity. And oftentimes in order to get to clarity, we have to declutter and we have to smooth out and we have to categorize or move around or manage our thoughts to get that clarity. And that happens in silence. That again, for me, that's common sense, but not common practice. It's not common to our culture. And so it takes intention, it takes a practice in order for us to really embody what I'm hearing you share is that state of clarity, that state of intention, the state of right action, right knowing, takes what sounds like for you, Claire, and I'm inspired and continue to be inspired by you is a daily practice, because every day we are met with the avalanche of thoughts, the avalanche of the to-do lists or the requests or the emails or the phone calls, that it is up to us as intentional leaders to have that practice to get clear.
Yes. And, just like we brush our teeth every day for physical cleanliness, we take a shower every day for physical cleanliness. That's what meditation is. It's a space to clean the mind, to purify the mind. And, what's coming to me in this moment is the analogy of if I had a jar here and I put mud in it and then I put clear water on top and shook it. Now that's the endless nature of the mind, thinking, processing, analyzing, judging. That's the jar that's shook up, the muddy jar. But now the moment, if I just put the jar down and I leave it long enough, eventually that water in there, the clear water, will rise to the top and the mud will settle to the bottom. That is the nature of nature. So that's exactly what I'm speaking to.
Ooh.
The clarity will come if we stop. So one of the yogic teachings is you cannot think your way to clarity.
Ooh.
You cannot think your way to clarity. So you just put the jar down, leave it, give yourself space, silence, rest. The clarity will arise within you. It's already in you.
The challenge of this life experience. Thank you so much for that, Claire. I feel like you took me to moon rising for a moment in this space, and just gave me that calm retreat through our conversation. I don't want to close up without the opportunity for you to share how people can, one, not only find you, but find your space, connect with you and connect with your space wherever they might be listening in from. Where would you direct our audience to be able to find the sacred spaces and your connection and energy out there?
So probably Instagram would be the best, because we've documented all these journeys of our spaces through pictures and video. So Lighthouse Yoga is at Lighthouse Yoga Miami. And then our retreat center is Moon Rising Retreat on Instagram.
Beautiful.
And then I'm personally on there as well. So you can reach out.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your presence and your time today, and leaving us with some nuggets for not only our year, but the rest of our lives to explore and bring into our daily practice. Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you for having me, Axel. And I look forward to when life brings you to Moon Rising.
I will be there. Thank you.